Hey, hi, Siddharth.
Hi, hello, good afternoon. Hi.
Great, great. So good to hear your voice loud and clear.
Mm.
Um, so I think first of all, I would like you to, just wanted to congratulate you on the GMAT score. And as we were discussing earlier, once GMAT gets done, then the whole MBA application battle looks a lot more achievable. Correct?
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, can you just tell what happened on the day of the test? Just wanted to start. So when you saw the score, how did it feel, especially after, the efforts that you had put in?
Yeah, so the day of the test actually was so I'd already decided that like 3 days before the exam, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to relax. So on the day of the exam, I was pretty relaxed. I slept well, and like I already like I was well hydrated. I had like planned for a meal in the break. So yeah, I mean the exam day was pretty cool for me.
Great. And you walked, so where was your test center?
Test center was in Bangalore. It was in, I don't recall.
Dickinson Road?
I don't recall that. Sorry. It was somewhere like in central Bangalore, close to
Correct.
that.
That's one center, Dickinson Road, which is perpendicular to MG Road. Uh,
Mhm.
so great. And just to give people the sense of your score. So can you give the split of your 725? What was the Quant V and DI score?
Yeah, I got a Q90 V85 and DI83.
Okay, so Quant 90 V85 DI83, and then
Mm.
you saw the magic score flash in front of your eyes, right? So now let's reflect on the journey that brought you here. So
Mm.
when did you think of GMAT and what led you to this moment of triumph? I'm pretty sure a lot of people, and before I kind of this wanted to preface, a lot of people, what they think is that a person will wake up in the morning, solve OG, go take the test, get a 725 and walk out, right? And they're like, oh, I'm not like that. So that's
Mm.
the question people have. So people want to know what's your journey. So how did it all start? And
Okay, so I think I wanted to do an MBA for a very long time actually, because I was like the most like whoever I studied with in undergrad, like most of them went for their MS. I knew that I'm not going to do that. And so as I started working, I realized that, I have some sort of long-term goals, which involves, let's say, starting a startup. So for that, I need like a well-rounded sort of base and like a strong network and, all that. So I think for that, the most logical sense was an MBA.
hmm,
And so why MBA from like the US or Europe and not from India? So I think that is because I really like I really like the charm of first of all studying in the US, and way that the MBA happens in the US is way different from the way it happens in India. It's uh, I would say that like also the work culture in the US is very different because I work with them every day, so I know how it works there. And so yeah, I think also one of the pulls was let's say a very good salary as well. And now that like a lot of the MBAs have become STEM MBAs, so that also extends my time to work there. So all of these factors played a part.
great. So I think, Siddharth, one thing that I'm looking as a takeaway for the students also is having a very clear why kind of helps you sustain the motivation. Because
Yeah.
many times what happens is suddenly one day, GMAT, it's not working for you. Like, why am I even doing it? So very,
Hmm.
great to hear your clear why. So coming to now, so you have decided, okay, MBA, and you realize GMAT is the way. So how did you get to hear about Crackverbal? How did that journey start? How did your prep journey start, and how did that go?
So I was just like, I looked at multiple sort of courses, and but Aquarbal one was like it attracted me the most because I think I like the sort of interface, and I think like the syllabus is more or less the same across all the classes. It's just that like the way they present it to you, the way the way the teachers are, and how how you can interact with them. That is what matters most. Where
Got it.
Crackverbal impressed me, so that's how I decided to go.
And you had taken the live online program, correct?
Mhm.
So, and that during the weekends you were doing the theory, and
Mm.
then during the weekdays you were kind of practicing. Is that right?
Yeah.
How? Okay. And you completed OG, and everything was there. Then talk us through your first attempt.
Okay, so I started preparing in August, and my first attempt was in December, I think.
Hmm.
So about 4 months. So my first attempt was actually the classic attempt. So I was preparing for the GMAT classic exam.
Hmm.
So, so actually, I got a 710 in the classic exam. So that was Q49 V38, I think.
Hmm.
So in my mocks, like I was consistently getting like 760s and 750s. So I knew that like I didn't do as like you can say as I didn't live up to my potential in the exam basically. So I knew that I had to give a reattempt.
Right.
On
And sometimes it's an internal calibration. Nobody needs to come and tell you it's a good score or a bad score. You just feel dissatisfied that you've not reached your potential, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that nobody should settle for what anything less than what they deserve, right? I mean, I feel that you're only doing yourself a disservice if you do.
That's kind of inspiring to hear. And also now the format changed. So from classic edition, you also had the other problem of focus edition. So how did you cope with that?
Yeah, okay. So that actually was like obviously nobody has a say in it. We just have to roll with it. And so I think the main change was obviously the DI section. So the DI section is not that different from like let's say the quant or verbal. It's ultimately just a mix of them. The types of questions are different for them. So let's say like because like in the classic attempt, I had an 8 in IR, which is again not obviously. I mean, it's the max you can score, but again, percentile wise, a lot of people do score that. So, but yeah, I mean, I was not like a complete beginner for DI. It's just that more practice was required to deal with the different types of questions that they throw at you.
Right. And how did that go with the second attempt? So you took that. When was that?
Yeah, second attempt was in March, I think March sometime. So I think again, yeah, I was scoring well in my mocks, and in my second attempt, I scored a 615. Again,
Right.
which is unexpected. Like I did not expect that at all. Like I was scoring way better in mocks. So again, I mean, although I was really frustrated, I was contemplating just going with the 710, but I said, why not give it another shot? I mean, I know what I can score.
Right.
So yeah, I think my last attempt was second attempt was on 12th March. I think that was the date. And so yeah, that's when like I decided to, sort of throw everything in, just, solve as many problems as I can. And yeah, it paid off ultimately. So yeah.
Right. Did you have you been studying from March, or did you take a break, work and all that? How was it? How was your trip from March?
So after my second attempt, I sort of had to take a break for like a few days because I was definitely depressed looking at the score. So I had to take a break. But I think that break helped really. I mean, it brought sort of, it refreshed my memory, so that was helpful. I
Right.
mean, you don't know how things turn out. I mean,
Correct. I think sometimes, a lot of times, and we may dig a little deeper into this when we talk about test strategy a little later. But I think this is one query that a lot of students have, which is my practice test scores are good, but my final exam, I somehow seem to have got it. So just curious on your 615, what was the Q, V, and DI scores? Do you remember?
Q was I think 83 or something. V was 80, and DI was 78, 79, something. I don't
Right.
know.
Got it. So this happened, and then now let's look at the final triumph, right? Which is with the 725. So let's look at all the three sections. So maybe Siddharth, I wanted to ask first with Quant, you scored a perfect Q90. You also scored a 83, and you are an engineer, right? So a lot of engineers that we speak to, they have this thing, yeah, I have to do 90 or I have to get as high as possible in Quant. So what has been your approach and what advice would you generally have?
So actually the thing is that with the new GMAT, I think they've really made scoring on the quant section really hard. So even if like you miss one or two questions, I've seen people on GMAT Club getting like B82, 83 just with two questions wrong. Obviously, there are multiple factors like difficulty and all that stuff that comes in. But I feel that overall the scoring on the quant has become really tough as compared to the classic GMAT. And so yeah, I would say that for quant, like what worked for me is to practice different kinds of problems. Let's say that initially when you're starting out, start with easy, medium, and so the hard questions I think are nothing but a combination of two or three concepts,
Hmm.
and you just need to be prepared. Like when you're giving the exam, nothing should come as a surprise to you. I mean, although I would say one thing that there will always be one question that will sort of be a surprise, like you will not expect it at all. And I think that question is your make or break question. So that will decide whether you'll get a Q90 or a Q85 or something.
Great. So now let me ask a question that students have, which is now there is a pressure on me to have a perfect Q score or a good score as high as possible. Now I see a question which I have not seen earlier, correct? Uh, what do I do when I'm kind of under that stress? So in that stress, how do I manage it, especially when I'm expecting so high of myself?
I think so that stress is kind of like first of all, like I would say just like cover all your bases instead of focusing on getting that Q90. I would say that make sure that you're thorough with all your concepts, because at the exam day, like anything can happen, right? You can either get a Q90 or you can either, let's say you miss out one question, you get a Q85. So that is not in our hands, right? What is in our hands is to just practice a lot and work hard. I mean, taking undue stress just, because it's not in our hands. So might as well not take that stress and, go with a fresh mind.
That's a great point, almost like a stoic philosophy that we control what is only in our hands, right?
Mm.
We have
Yeah.
worked hard, we have solved all kind of questions. You
Mm.
mentioned this thing about hard questions on quant. So obviously the theory or the concepts remain the same, but you mentioned this mix of concepts. So what is your take on that? Like what's been your experience?
Mix of concepts is nothing but I mean, it's just like, let's say you get a question mixed with probability, and let's say there's another question mixed with like rate and time, or I mean, it can be anything, right? I mean, it's just that if you, or it, there are some questions where, let's say, mm, let's say something like a time question comes in, right? Where there's like a leap year question around leap years. So if you have not done that before, like getting that within the 2 minutes is difficult. So when I say solving different types of questions, that's what I mean by it. That, you already have done that question before. So it's not going to take you 4 or 5 minutes to solve that. You're going to be done in like 1.5, 2 minutes with that.
Right. So I hear you say this, so which is I can possibly solve a question in
Mm.
4 5 minutes, but what practice really is doing is making it faster for me to solve it with more confidence because I've seen it in the past. Correct?
Yeah.
Great, great. And just kind of piggybacking on that, the use of logic. So how much of logic-based maths you're seeing in quant, especially word problems?
Logic, can you give me an example of that?
A question that would be based on not just the principles of math, but also
Mm.
some kind of logic you need to use to interpret word problems. I'm talking specifically when you look at a word problem, how do
Mm.
you translate it into a equation is a challenge that sometimes, like if I get the equation, I can get it right. But read
Mm.
it, how do I process that logic?
So I think the first part to that would be the comprehension part. So you need to first of all read the question thoroughly and not miss out on any sort of small quirks that they throw in, right? So I think that is the first part, and the next part would be like, let's say if it's a rate and time question, so you need to understand what exactly is it. Are they talking about rates or are they talking about times? So that is where people get it wrong often. So once you know actually what they're talking about, then you need to like sort of, let's say there are like three people and then you need to sort of map it correctly. So I think that that takes a little bit of effort initially, but and that is where a lot of mistakes happen as well. So I would say just take your time to mapping that part actually. And once you get it, it's obviously then it's all theory. You can go ahead with it.
Interesting what you mentioned about traps. So one of the things about quant that we usually tell students as well is rather
Hmm.
than solving the question, we have to think about getting to the right answer, right? So the shift of so all these traps that you have are just placed, and with more practice, you get better at avoiding it, right?
Yeah.
I also have Devmitra who I'll be asking to join later when we get into the Q&A. But I'm just going to go to the next part, which is verbal. So how has verbal been for you?
Okay, verbal has always been my Achilles heel. I mean, from the beginning. So like initially even I faced like a lot of problems dealing with CR. So initially when I was preparing for Classic, there was SC as well. Fortunately, that got removed from the for the Focus edition, which I think is a welcome move, to be honest. And so yeah, I mean the thing with CR is that again, what the most important thing is to sort of dial down on what the question is actually asking you, right? So because it can get confusing oftentimes because you read like the stimulus and then you reach to, so more often than not you come to a different conclusion than what the author is trying to think. I think the first and most important part is to basically narrow down on what the author actually wants you to understand from that passage, and then like then you can there are obviously multiple ways, like the process of elimination is the most like you can say impactful, where you just start eliminating the answers, but that is only possible once you know what the argument is trying to say. And then obviously there will always be sort of two answers which are similar. Then you have to sort of dig a little deeper into, so let's say one answer choice might be a little extreme, right? And so it might not cover all the bases. And more often than not, the answer that is a little vague is the answer. Often, obviously, I'll say more often than not, it's not always the case. But yeah, so these are again things that you pick up from practice. And again, so initially I also had problems where, let's say, there are different domains. Let's say there are social sciences or business or technology related passages. So if someone's weak in some sort of domain, so I would also say that, target, practice a little more of those passages first. And once you're good with it, yeah, obviously the central strategy is
No, no,
always,
pause
yeah,
for
sorry.
just a second, just to so before we move on to RC, since we are
Hmm.
on CR, what I
Uh-huh.
heard is the fact that the stimulus can be confusing,
Hmm.
and it is very important for us to keep a focus on what is the question asking, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's a very key point that you mentioned, because many a time what I see is people don't, especially assumption-based questions. If
Hmm.
you don't get the conclusion right, you confuse what the conclusion is, you go on a different, kind of route, and the answer options look very confusing. Now, one other thing that you mentioned, which is two answer options, and this is something a lot of students really struggle with, which is they are saying they have been able to eliminate three of the answer options, and they are
Hmm.
missing the last two, and that troubles them. And they
Hmm.
invariably get it wrong. What is
Hmm.
your take?
Yeah, obviously, even I face the same issues. But like I said, ultimately, like there are some methods, obviously, where let's say something is too extreme, something is just out of scope. It does not cover the problem that we have at hand. Or let's say it can be that something is a little too vague or not related to what we are saying. And more often than not, it's these cases. Very rarely you'll find like a question. So these are hard level questions where something is uh, even if like it's not exactly related to the answer, it is still the answer because all the other answers are way off. Something like that.
Very, very, very key thing put. In fact, I just got off a session where I was
Hmm.
teaching ASEAN. That was also my submission, which is it's the last man standing. So if there is no reason to eliminate, that's a good enough reason for it to be the right answer. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in out of scope. Now, especially when you look at strength and weaken, and while
Hmm.
solving even official questions on the OG, you might have felt,
Hmm.
tearing your hair, saying, "Ki, what is this logic? When can I assume things, and when can I say it is out of scope?" So, how did you handle and balance it out?
So there are some ways that you can approach these kind of questions. So let's say if I start with assumptions. So if something breaks that argument when it is negated,
Correct.
so that is your answer.
Right.
So if let's say you have a strength in question, so let's say that my argument tells me A leads to B. So for a strength in question, that answer choice has to either strengthen strengthen A, or let's say weaken everything else. Or let's say if it is a weaken question, then it has to weaken A or strengthen everything.
Right.
So yeah, sort of different types have their different ways to approach them. But you just have to like again, it's a matter of practice. So
Right. Thanks, Siddharth. I think that gives a good sense. And what you said is a lot of what we teach, right? Which is the negation and making sure you use it as a litmus test. Coming on to RC, you were starting with RC. Sorry, I kind of had to pause, but if you could just proceed on RC, what has been, how are you, using skimming, scanning, solving? How are you kind of going through that?
again, I think for RC, what matters is like what each paragraph is trying to say, basically. I would say that initially, like obviously people do need to, you can say, uh, like I said earlier, there are some passages from social sciences which I found initially difficult. So you just have to go step by step, just understand what each passage is trying to say. Also keep in mind the tone, right? That tone is important. So there will be a question that what is the sort of tone that the author has? Is it like negative, condescending, or positive, whatever? Like that is a sort of question that comes in. Certain words that trigger that tone that needs so you need to like sort of keep that in mind. And other than that, yeah, it's just about understanding the way the passage is put, and if you convert it into like a story yourself, that helps. That helped me.
Correct. I think two things I hear from what you said. One is the whole idea of the gist that you get. What you said, understanding the meaning of the paragraph, not
Hmm.
the sentence or the words. Like a
Hmm.
zoom out view. Key, what does it say? Correct.
Hmm.
Second is kind of getting that overlay, the story,
Hmm.
the structure. So he's starting introducing a particular theory. Then second paragraph, he says, however, on the other hand, and third
Hmm.
paragraph, he has yet more one more contradiction, but new results are showing something else, right? So you could kind of get at this, and what you said about tone also being important, right? Students tend to have this problem where they want to understand all the things given in the passage. So when they're
Hmm.
reading a social science passage, what to do if I'm getting caught into the details? And no matter how much I know that eventually I have to answer the questions, but while I'm reading it, I just seem to be in this love of reading the passage. Has that happened to you? And what do you?
Yeah, it did happen to me, obviously, when some passages can get a little bit too deeper into some of the details, or if let's say it's like a history passage comes up, which is sort of, or let's say like an art passage, those are found a little difficult, where the author is introducing multiple things at the same time.
Right.
So I would, yeah, now is that what I did was basically to sort of keep a track of where the story is going, like don't sort of veer away from like it's all comes down to focus eventually, like how you're able to sort of focus on the exam. And just don't track. So if something comes up, don't lose track of where you're going in that story. Obviously it is difficult for me as well, but again, it's something that you have to practice.
Right. Correct, Siddharth. I think the thing is, because we are smart, because we are used to understanding everything, we tend to be more involved. But sometimes taking that pause is very important for us to give. Uh, just wanted to give a quick thing to the audience saying that I just want to go through data insights. Then we have test taking strategy. My intent is to kind of get to the Q&A in the last 20 minutes or so. So we can have people have asked their questions. So great. So data insights now. So you got a impressive score, but the first time it moved from a 78 also, right? So what did you do the second time around?
I think I just practiced more. I got exposure to a lot of variety of questions, and whatever existing questions I was getting right, I made sure that I improved my timing on it. I got to, sort of, what you can say, those easy medium questions. I tried to get it out of the way as soon as possible so that I can spend more time on these hard questions.
Right.
And other than that, I think yeah, DI is pretty much like an open book. Like literally anything can come up. You just have to be prepared and pray that it goes your way.
Right. I like the fact that you approach it as that, because sometimes when you look at MSR, it is what it means. Multiple sources and you have to answer a question. So your
Hmm.
ability to read through data is going to be a skill. So how did you feel that? Because a lot of times students feel very overwhelmed when they see a lot of data coming to them.
Yeah, it definitely is overwhelming. Even if it was the same for me as well. But again, I would say that like it is important for MSR. It is important to not get lost into the details. Like whatever question is there in front of you, I would say just focus around those areas only. Not don't go anywhere else deeper. Like so because that more often than not leads to the wrong answer, and it also leads to a lot of time wasting. So be as concise as possible, I would say.
I think, if you look at it, MSR is just an extended version of RC, which is
Hmm.
not everything that is given will be asked to you. So I think the focus is just to look at it. And in general, when you look at things like graphs and tables and two-part analysis, anything on those question types, or did it come more naturally to you?
Uh, Graphs, again, I would say that like it's important to sort of pay attention to the details there because uh, like it's also important to approximate a lot of things when you're dealing with graphs. So you don't want the exact answer, but you want the answer that is closest to it for purposes of time, right? And yeah, this strategy has helped me. Like I saved a lot of time while calculating, and yeah, and it also leads to the sort of right answer more of 99% of the times.
Correct.
So and for I think tables, I think again tables like the exam gives the ability to sort of sort by whatever column you're working on. So I think that is helpful. That really helps to sort of slow down the time. But again, I think for tables, like you need to be sort of you need to give attention to detail because it's very easy to get just overlook something and get it wrong.
Right.
So again, yeah, it like focus is more important there. But it's not like it's not very difficult. It's just that you need to pay attention to what you do.
Right. I think interesting points we covered, which is though you may have more data like an MSR, you have to focus on what is required for you to answer.
Mm.
Answer options are actually a clue. So when you approximate and you look at the answer option, cannot be 10, 20. At least, you kind of improve your odds of getting it right, even if you're not sure. And the third interesting point you mentioned was the attention to those specific words, verbiage, like what is the numerator, what is the denominator. Sometimes if you are confused with that,
Mm.
would also lead to a wrong answer. Great. Now putting it all together, right? So you have three sections, 45 minutes, quant, verbal, DI. Walking into the test, what was your section selection order? Also, what did you do in terms of your prep material? I'm going to ask a three-part question. Okay. So the first part of it is, the section selection, what you picked. Second part is what is the overall, because at some point you would have run out of prep material, right? So
Mm.
especially, when you look at official material, what are the questions you are doing? And the third part is regarding the mock tests, right? So let's start with the section selection. So how did you go about that?
Okay, so my idea was pretty simple. I wanted to start with verbal because that was my most challenging section. So I wanted to get it out of the way when I'm when my mind is fresh. And after that, I wanted to go for quant because then once you're done with verbal and quant, you sort of warmed up for DI. So my section order was BQDI.
Interesting. So verbal, because you wanted to, your mind is fresh, you wanted to start with verbal, since that was the one you needed to pay attention. Then quant is already a strong point, and in some sense you have gotten that inertia also out, so you are able to move. Then, if I were to understand, you take the break.
I think I took a break. Yeah, I think I took a break after verbal and quant. Yeah.
Because before DI, you want to take a break because you've already been sitting for about 90 minutes, right? You want to kind of just get that. Excellent. So now in terms of prep material, can you walk us through what are the questions you did just in terms of practice? And also I want to touch upon why official material, the way GMAT structures it, what did you feel about them?
So I use material from three sources. One is Crackverbal, the other is official questions, and the third is GMAT Club questions. So so I think what matters, like in terms of material, right? Like it's important to sort of, especially in the initial days of the focus exam where DI material was scarce. So it was important that sort of I took my time with it, like focus more on getting the question right and focus less on, getting it right quickly. So but if I start with, let's say, quant, like whose material is the same, so I started with like easy medium questions initially when I was going through the theory. Again, I focused on accuracy more, and once I got comfortable, focus on time. And same for verbal, started with medium, go for hard. And like towards the end of my like last attempt, what I used to do was so for GMAT Club, right? There's this sort of way where you can randomize questions. So I use that a sort of randomized questions for let's say I start. So every day I used to do like 30 questions of quant, 30 verbal, uh, and 20 DI. Sorry, no, I don't know. Sorry, it changed, right? It's 21, 21, 21, 20 questions per day. So I used to do that, and I used to solve randomized questions, like anything could come. So that helped build that stamina to face the actual exam. So I think this strategy helped me a lot. And although I would not recommend it to everyone because doing this every day, so it becomes like you're giving a mock every day, and it can become tiring, especially when you're working, right? So obviously, on days where there was a lot of work, I could not do this, but on other days, I compensated it because yeah, again, like this is important, so I have to do it anyway.
Great, great. So what I hear from you is two things. One is you kind of went through easy, medium, hard. So you want to build your core with some easier questions, then move to medium. Because sometimes when people start prepping, in the first 1 week, they want to start solving the hardest questions, right? Especially in verbal, sometimes, it just requires a little bit of stamina building through easy and medium before we are able to truly appreciate what hard questions can do for us. And the second thing that you mentioned, which is having these slightly lengthy prep sessions, right? Slightly lengthier. So one of the things that we are actually have added to the Crackverbal tests is now these sprints, these quizzes, where people can actually take a particular section, solve, a set of questions. So I think doing that sectional test in your mind, 20 questions, it's just building your stamina, correct? Very interesting. And in terms of the mock tests, what were your scores and how many did you take and what was your general sense?
So for mocks, I had the OG mocks, I had the crack verbal mocks as well, and I also had the GMAT club mocks. So there was a lot of mocks to give, and my sort of scores ranged from 655 to 715. So it was the whole range. Again, then I would say that for mocks, like there can be some variations, obviously, but I think they sort of give you a good enough idea of what you're going to do on the exam. There will obviously be outliers where some people, and that includes me, will score a little higher on the actual exam. But more often than not, people score whatever is the average, like they are scoring across mocks. So yeah.
But I think that's something that would surely motivate a lot of people to hear that your highest score was not your mock test. You actually got 10 points higher than the highest you had scored in mock, right? Which usually is. So that can also happen, but largely it is going to be in the range, correct? So, and I think, just to add, I feel the GMAT official test, of course, because they have the algorithm from the test makers and the kind of questions they have seem to be more. So what was your scores in the GMAT official test? Do you remember? If you...
Official test, again, it was between 656 to 705, 715. That's the same range.
So 685. So in some sense, what also was happening is you are getting a sense that look, Q90 is possible, V85 is possible, and D83, right? Is also possible, correct? So once you know it is possible, it is the thing of bringing it all together on the day of the test, right?
Yeah.
Great, great. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask Devmitra also to join. So she's also there. So since she also kind of taught the quant part, I just wanted.
Hey, hi Siddharth. Can you hear me?
Hello, hi, Devmitra. How are you?
Very, very good, and very happy to see you back here, but for a different reason, not for a class this time.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let everyone also know that, when I asked Siddharth, how was the GMAT? His one-line response, it was good, got 725. So you got 725, you should be happier, but no, it was very normal. My preparation has gone in a certain line, so this score doesn't really surprise me much. So very happy to hear that. What I actually wanted to also understand is you got a full-on quant. So was there any edit you made during the test?
No, I did not make any edits.
You did not make it. It's good. That's what I wanted to know. But congratulations, wishing you the best. For the mocks, I remember one of the discussions we used to have was, can we practice more? Can we have more resources to practice? So in the during your practice sessions, what could be the range of hours you used to study, mostly as like a minimum and maximum towards the fag end, like last 1 week, let's say?
Last 1 week, actually, like out of the 7 days, I did not do anything at all for three days. Like towards the last 3 days before the exam, I didn't do anything. I was just chilling because I know that is important. Like I want a fresh mind for the exam. But the other 4 days, I gave mocks like every day.
And was any mock taken in the last week of your prep? Official mock?
Last week, yeah, I gave 3 mocks like last week.
The last week, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think you took a break 3 days before the test.
Yeah.
And you stopped doing anything.
Yeah.
Usually, would you recommend candidates to take a pause or take a break every week, once in a day, once in a week, or half a day in a week, something like that, just to ensure that they do shut down to become more productive?
So I had to take those breaks involuntarily because of work. Because on some days there's a lot of work, and you just cannot sort of juggle on those days. So I would say it's fine because like I would compare it to a workout, right? Like if you go to a workout 7 days a week, you're going to burn out. I would say that so it's okay to take a break. It actually helps to recover and you actually perform better. So I would say it's completely fine.
Amazing. And just to ask, to go on that question, did you take any break while you were on the test? Like suppose you're on quant section on the verbal. Was it like back to back question? Or any point of time you kind of really stopped for some time by choice that I want to take a break now, then move on?
Actually, I was stuck. So on question 19, so if you see my ESR, so that question took me around 10 minutes. And even after 10 minutes, I was only like 60% sure. It was like, I mean, if it's not this answer, then I don't know what is the answer, and it turned out to be right. So those 10 minutes, so it was so luckily, like, because I was able to solve everything else quickly, like I had that time there. But yeah, I mean, that was a question which really, like, it scared me. Like, I don't know if this was right or not. And after that, like, yeah, the next two questions also were a little difficult. So I think that was the time where I was a little stuck in the quant section. For verbal, I would say, like, more or less, verbal was until like the very last, I think, two questions, like where I had to rush a little bit. But other than that, like, I think verbal was okay. Like, obviously, there are some questions where you get stuck because you either uh, you don't understand how to proceed, or it's just too complex for you. So I faced that in verbal. But yeah, I think that happens to everyone, and you just hope for the best. And for DI, I think, again, for the last couple of questions, I did face some time pressure because there were some questions where I got stuck. But yeah, again, like, I had to be a little quick there, and yeah, it turned out to be good. So yeah, I would say that don't be afraid if you're kind of uh, sort of stuck. If you like, but I would say that don't be stuck for a long time, like, because then it just eats time out of your other questions. So
Correct.
that is my
Absolutely.
feedback. Yeah.
I know it's been some time that you've taken the GMAT. I'm just trying my luck and see you remember this. Do you remember your timing strategy which you took up on the test, specifically for Quant and DI?
Planning strategy, as in?
Timing strategy, like
Timing strategy. Okay.
first we
Uh,
can start with DI, then we can go to that.
Okay, so I didn't really have like a strict timing strategy. I just know that if, like, if the timer crosses 2 minutes, I have to be really quick, or I don't want to waste more than 3 minutes on one section, one question. Sorry. So that was more or less my timing strategy. It's not something very deep. It's just that I know when to stop, and when to go ahead. That's it.
But what about an MSR in that case? That doesn't really end up with usually 6 minutes. It does take more time than 6 minutes. How did you manage there?
MSR. So to be honest, I did not prepare for any such section as such. I just, like, whatever question comes in, like, I just have to do it within like 3 minutes, like, because I don't want to spend too much time on any single question, whatever section it may be.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. I'm just hoping that you took a good time off after the test, because 3 attempts and 3 times starting with a 7. So hope you really had a chill time after that. You did take a break, hopefully.
Yeah, for a short while, yes, but then again, applications had started, so yeah, it was busy for me.
Aspirants or an MBA, I don't think people do really get the time off with this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Arun sir, I don't have any more questions.
Great, Devmitra. In fact, your question actually was interesting because what Siddharth said, and I just want to leave it as a takeaway for others, which is, even if you think you're screwed up, right? Because when you are in that question and you took 10 minutes, and that was your second section. Very easy.
Yeah.
Balloons coming. So it's very, very easy for us to say, you know what, I screwed up my test, let me, so I think the fact that you came back, right? And the fact that perfectly okay for us to be stuck and not know what to do on the GMAT. So it's not that, all the questions are a breeze and we get to solve them. So great point. All right. So what I'm going to do is, it's about 1:15. I just wanted to excuse me, ask if anyone in the audience had any questions. So that was really the format that we shared some things. And if you can turn on your video, that will be great. If you can turn on your audio, that's also good. Or you can let us know in the chat window. 3 options. Or actually, you can put it in the Q&A box. So you can put it in the Q&A box in case you want to type it. Otherwise, you can. how long Sahil's question is, how long was your, I think we touched upon it, but if you could just tell how long it was.
My GMAT journey was around, you can say, around 8 months.
Right. And what I would hear over here, Siddharth, is that the basics remain the same for everyone. So the course is maybe a 2-3 month journey, which is when you took the first thing. But after that, the rest of the time is highly dependent on you, correct?
Correct.
So I think one of the analogies that I mentioned is that no, anyone can get a six-pack, but provided where you start from. So some people may need some more time, some people may need less time. So I just wanted to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Sahil is no, it's he's I think he's posted it to others. What about others? Any questions? And again, as I said, that's the intent. If you have any questions, we are here to. I saw one come up on Q&A. Is it useful to have notebook for all the tricky twists in GMAT so you can always keep this in your mind? So this is where, people like something tactile that when they are studying, write down something and just make notes, because that's how we did it in college also. So what was your experience?
Yeah, I did that too actually, but instead of noting it down, like I just bookmarked it. So I don't know about the latest like Crackverbal thing, but for GMAT Club, you can just bookmark a question and you can refer to it later. So that is really helpful actually, and I definitely recommend doing that.
Right. But any kind of notes that you are taking about the concepts, any takeaways from the question, like your own personal learnings, anything that you made note of?
No, I did not do that because I don't have the habit of doing that. So it's not going to work for me, but it might work for someone else.
Fair enough. It's a personal choice, really. For some reason, for some people, it is. So I use like a digital iPad kind of, to scroll. So it's everyone has a different way of looking at it. So great. I also have this question from Disha, which is, how frequently did you attempt mock test? Like how many in a week, kind of?
Oh, okay. So initially when I was preparing like with the theory and stuff, I did not give any mock. I started giving mocks only, let's say, around 1 month before my first attempt. But then I used to be sort of regular with my mocks. So like every week, like I used to give around 2 mocks, which I think is sort of enough. Although for me, like I scored my lowest mock score in my first attempt. So obviously, and after that, like I didn't have a lot of theory to prep for. I just had to practice. So I gave 4 mocks.
I just
So I
want to clarify over here. When I say mock, are these practice tests which are, like maybe sectional test or a set of questions you're doing it, or is it the actual GMAT like kind of test?
So the actual tests are it's a mix of both actually, but I would say the actual tests they sort of run out after a point in time. So I would say that like focus more on sectional tests where you can solve everything like all topics in Quant, and then keep the actual exam like the mock exam for, let's say, once you feel, let's say, keep it only once a week or once in 2 weeks when you're initially starting out, because then after a point in time the questions start repeating and then you cannot gauge your preparedness based on that.
Right, right. Great point. So let's look at it. Looking back at your GMAT prep journey, what is it that you would do differently or better?
uh, uh, okay, so what I would do differently is that first like prepare more on what are my weak concepts. So I think initially I did not give a lot of attention to that. And I would say for verbal, especially focus more on, like I said earlier, what the question is trying to say instead of directly being impulsive and just jumping into the answers and then checking what fits. So I think that would have saved me a lot of headaches. So yeah, that's what I recommend to everyone.
Right. And I think when we are practicing also, what happens is we are conscious of the errors, and the idea is to ensure that all of this practice is really yielding to a point that we don't make the errors. Otherwise, more practice without the analysis is futile, right? So how are you analyzing these tests, analyzing these questions?
Okay, so when I started to analyze a section, first, so there are two parts to it. So first is the time part. So if you see that even if you got a question right, but you took a lot of time, so it means that you need to work more on that. And the second and more obvious thing is basically where you get a question wrong. Now, let's say you get a question wrong. Now you need to look at why you got it wrong. So is it like a concept issue? Is it like a silly mistake? Or is it like you missed something, like you missed a small part of the section, which basically points to, let's say, lack of attention. Once you identify these three parts, then you can start to work on it, like, and ensure that you don't repeat the same mistakes again.
Right, right. I think that's a key to not repeat. So also there is one more question, which is someone who's less confident in quant, okay, and how do we have a practical strategy to overcome this or minimize this to the best? So this is more of a a preparation question, because I know that was not scared with quant, correct? So what I usually suggest for people who have a little bit of worry about quant is to say that, look, so one simple exercise that I suggest is take 4 fours and create numbers from 0 to 100. Okay. So if I want to create 0 with 4 fours, so I'll say 4 plus 4 minus 4 minus 4. Right? So it becomes if I want 1, I can say 4 upon 4 plus 4 minus 4. Now you have to go to 2, correct? So 2, you could obviously get 4 by 4 plus 4 by 4, or you could say 4 plus 4 plus 4 divided by 4, correct? Now like this, I just gave till 2, 3, you can imagine, right? Like what is for 13? So what happens is, a lot of times you realize that what you require to solve that question is basic arithmetic operation, but your mind needs to be nimble, correct? Because at some point, especially on harder questions, there have to be some leaps of faith you need to make, assuming something, and I think, mental agility would be a key over there. I have one question, Siddharth, which is just wanted to know, did you have any revision strategy for gaining hold of all concepts, and did you maintain your mistakes? How are you maintaining your mistakes and error log? How are you revising your concepts?
Okay, so my error log was basically the bookmarks that I had. All the questions that I got wrong went into my bookmarks. And regarding my revision strategy, that was more or less practice, right? I mean, let's say you get one question wrong. What you can do is you can go to GMAT Club, you can put in that question. You can see that there are a lot of similar questions related to that. So what you can do is you can solve a little more of those questions, and yeah, ultimately, if you do like 2 or 3 questions which are similar, you're bound to get it right the next time. I would say that the only way to revise is to practice. This is even more relevant when it comes to quant.
Right. I think that's a very critical thing, that GMAT is not a test of knowledge, right? All the quant formulas can fit into an A4 size paper, but that is not going to get you to a Q90, correct? So I think this thing that, I'll forget something. I've had a lot of friends, I'm forgetting it. You don't forget it, but you may have lack of practice, which is different. When you kind of practice after a couple of weeks, you feel a little rusty, correct? So that is genuine, but I think we tend to not forget, but just that our brain tends to think that we have forgotten things. Right? Anything else? I just kind of make sure that I've answered all the questions. I see most of them crackable. I've seen them in the class. So Disha, Imtiaz, Tika. I'm seeing a lot more names, but I'm just wanting to just pause over here. We are roughly around 128, 126. So we have maybe one more question. If not, I have one for you, but if there is anything from the audience, I'll take that one last question and then. Okay, so if no more questions, then I would like to specifically ask about Crackverbal journey. So you obviously interacted with the faculty. So anything that you can think from there that you thought stood out for you?
Yeah, I think so. One major differentiator that I found with Crackverbal is that the teachers, right, they are more invested in you than, let's say, I have heard stories where, like once you're done with the course, you just have to email the teacher and, they just reply you back over email. There's no sort of personal touch with the candidate. So I feel that this is something where like Crackverbal has done well. So where they are really invested in you. I think having a small batch size also helps with that. So that is one pro of that. But again, I really had a very positive experience with Crackverbal. I always recommend people to join. So
Right. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for your kind words, and also thank you so much for being online and helping out the students. I'm pretty sure a lot of students have got a lot more inspired hearing you speak, and all of them are in their journey. I know that, and many of them are looking at R2. It is now, October, so they have that final push, October, November. So they want to make sure they are able to kind of, scale that to apply in R2. So thank you so much, and wishing everyone all the best for your prep. Yeah.
yep. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.